In the world we live in and work in, everything's moving and changing. So it's naive of us to expect that just because we've set our project up really well, we've got a brilliant team and an amazing project plan, that the world isn't going to change, because it is. So things change, priorities change, environments change. As a good project manager, you need to be able to work with those changes, so there's a flexibility that's required. However, it's not a naive or ignorant flexibility. It's about conscious decision making. So because you've set up that really good framework and you understand your project and your roles and responsibilities and the key targets you've got to hit, when a manager comes and needs to make a change, or some other stakeholders raise something you weren't aware of and something has to happen, you actually have got all the tools there and all the information there to make an incredibly informed decision. So what I talk about in our projects is a thing called a variation. So a variation is when you're changing something fairly significant in the project. Now, if you remember in our initial documentation or in our project plan, we had a few key areas. We had objective, scope, governance and responsibilities, and the deliverables and milestones. If any of those change, so if anything in your original documented sort of key pillars of the project information changes, do a formal variation. By formal variation, what I mean by that is something written. We do an actual update to the project management plan. You can certainly do that, but some sort of written document or amendment that then gets resubmitted to the sponsor, resubmitted to the key stakeholders or project team. You want the sponsor to re-engage at that point and go, yes, I recognise that you've made that change for this reason and you've said to me that this is what it means. That way, no one can come later on and say we didn't know that this was changing, because everyone's realised that this is an important change. Not every change needs to be to that level though. So smaller changes do occur on the fly, through the project. And you've got to be able to make the distinction between a small change that you can work within the parameters of your project and those larger changes that are likely to actually impact the success of the project as a whole. So that's where I do discriminate between items that are just in the project plan or just part of the project versus those things that we wrote down at the beginning, put in our documentation or our project plan. So just to recap, if it's in your project management plan or in your initial documentation in those 5 or 6 key areas, do a formal change request or variation process around that. If it's not, certainly have some discussions, make the decision yourself, update your project plan, consider the impacts of that change, but don't necessarily take it through a bureaucratic process. And if you think about things in that sense, hopefully the changes you're making a little bit as you go aren't the big ones that are going to make the big impact. And when those big ones do happen, you've got that initial document and information so that you know the difference and you can recognise that and go and address that appropriately.